The bitter taste of betrayal was a metallic tang on my tongue, a raw wound inflicted not by an enemy, but by the wife I adored, whose infidelity ripped the very foundation of my world apart. From the very beginning, I want you to understand one fundamental truth. I deeply adored my wife. Our connection had been unbreakable since we were mere children in middle school. We were not just best friends, but true partners, sharing every aspect of our lives. As adolescents, we were simply two youngsters who leaned on each other for support, navigating the awkwardness of puberty and the drama of first crushes. We'd spend hours on the phone after school, discussing everything from pop quizzes to dreams of our future, a future we always assumed would be intertwined. Upon reaching the age of 18, that strong bond of friendship gradually transformed into something more profound, a dynamic neither of us truly comprehended until it enveloped us entirely. My name is Alex Stone. I stand approximately 5 feet 10 inches tall and weigh around 180 pounds. I don't obsess over these figures. I maintain a fairly fit physique for a man approaching 32, a benefit of years spent on the track team throughout high school and college. Running wasn't just a sport, it was a discipline, a way to clear my head and push my limits. I still adhere to that morning exercise routine, the quiet solitude of the pre-dawn run, a cherished ritual. My hair is dark brown, though it has, somewhat prematurely, begun to show streaks of gray around the temples, a testament, perhaps, to the stresses of my chosen profession. Yet, I'm often told my green eyes offer a redeeming quality, a splash of color in an otherwise understated appearance. I work as a detective for a modest town's local precinct, a role that, frankly, seldom deals with anything more severe than minor theft and occasional pub brawls. It's a quiet life, or so I thought. My wife, Emily Parker, formerly Emily Hayes, was consistently described by others as our perfect match, and for a period, I genuinely believed them. She is undeniably beautiful. Long blonde hair, often styled in soft waves, piercing blue eyes that sparkled with mischief and warmth, and a smile that could take your breath away, lighting up any room she entered. Emily is also 32, and after we both completed university, me with a degree in criminal justice, her in paralegal studies, we exchanged vows in a sun-drenched ceremony on a warm autumn day, surrounded by family and friends. We built a life that was simple, stable, and overflowing with love. I frequently took her out, not just on special occasions. Whether it was a spontaneous dinner at our favorite Italian place, a weekend getaway to the coast, or simply a bouquet of her favorite peonies on a Tuesday, I never wanted her to forget her immense importance to me. She worked as a paralegal at one of the town's 2 legal practices, a profession that, while not glamorous, suited her well, allowing her to utilize her sharp mind and meticulous nature. Then there was Nathan Miller. Everyone in town knew Nathan. In his heyday, he was the archetypal golden boy, the star quarterback whose arm seemed touched by Midas, leading our high school to 3 consecutive state championships. He was a true hometown hero, the kind of person who always landed on his feet, effortlessly charming everyone around him. But a severe knee injury during his freshman year of college abruptly ended his promising football career, shattering his dreams of playing professionally. Upon his return home, his father, Mayor David Miller, secured him a seemingly cushy, yet influential, position at Town Hall, sidestepping any local grumbling about nepotism with a dismissive wave and a smile. Given his frequent collaborations with the Sheriff's Department on zoning issues and public safety initiatives, avoiding him entirely was simply not an option. Nathan had always harbored a clear interest in Emily. Even during high school, he would double date with us, bringing his then-girlfriend Sophia, and still brazenly flirt with Emily, right in front of me and Sophia. Emily, bless her heart, never indulged his advances, though sometimes his comments caused a blush to spread across her cheeks and a surge of anger in my veins. I warned Nathan more than once to stop, my voice low and firm, but he consistently brushed it off with a laugh, as if it were completely harmless, a mere playful jest. Eventually, he married Sophia, a quiet, kind woman, and settled into his comfortable town hall job, seemingly leaving his golden boy aspirations behind. However, Nathan is not just a figure from the past. He is intricately woven into the current events in ways I will soon reveal. Approximately a year ago, Emily and I had the rare pleasure of a Friday night to ourselves. We had plans, just the two of us, a quiet dinner at home, maybe a movie, a chance to simply reconnect after a particularly demanding week at work for both of us. But as is often the case, duty called. Sheriff Peterson contacted me, offering apologies for disrupting my day off, but explaining he needed someone to respond to a domestic disturbance near our residence. All patrol units were currently occupied, and I was the closest available officer. Sheriff Peterson's requests were rarely negotiable. When he needed you for something, you complied. I sighed, the familiar weight of responsibility settling on my shoulders. I kissed Emily goodbye, the soft scent of her perfume lingering on my lips, secured my badge and sidearm, and headed out into the cool evening. It was the familiar, depressing scene at the Smiths' residence. The air hung thick with unspoken tension and the faint smell of stale beer. Brenda Smith was in tears, her face blotchy and swollen, recounting in a trembling voice how her husband, Michael, had once again become intoxicated and violent, his shouts still echoing in the small house. Their two young children huddled anxiously behind her, their wide eyes reflecting a fear far too deep for their tender years. I spent what felt like hours calming Michael down, his belligerence slowly giving way to drunken remorse, and then transporting him to the station. And, like clockwork, Brenda refused to press charges, promising yet again that this time would be different, that she would eliminate alcohol from their lives and seek help. I had heard it all before. The same promises, the same predictable outcome, the endless cycle of hope and despair. It was becoming increasingly difficult to believe her, and the cynicism gnawed at me. That night, though, something felt profoundly off, a persistent little prickle of unease that I couldn't quite shake. By the time I finished the paperwork, the endless reports, the victim statements, the booking forms, it was nearly midnight. The fluorescent lights of the precinct hummed, casting a sterile glow on my weary face. When I walked through the door of my own home, the silence that greeted me was too loud. I found Nathan seated on our couch, looking entirely at ease, as if he owned the place, chatting animatedly with Emily. She looked freshly showered, her blonde hair damp around the edges, as though she had prepared herself anew after my departure, perhaps even changed into something more comfortable. A sharp jolt of unease prickled at the back of my neck, more insistent than before. What on earth was Nathan doing in my house at this hour? Striving to maintain my composure, to appear as if nothing were amiss, I leaned in and kissed Emily, my lips brushing her cool cheek. Sorry about tonight, babe. Michael's behind bars again. Maybe this time Brenda will finally wise up. Emily smiled, a little too brightly, as if nothing were amiss. It's okay, sweetie. Nathan called after you left. Since Sophie is visiting family, he wondered if we were up to anything tonight, given you were out. Nathan offered a casual shrug, a smirk playing on his lips. Didn't mean to crash date night, man. Guess I got lucky you were called out. His arrogant grin, that familiar, infuriating smirk, made me want to forcibly remove him right then and there, to wipe that smug expression off his face with my fist, but I managed to keep my tone civil, barely. Well, sorry to hear about Sophia, I said, forcing a smile that felt like a grimace. But if you don't mind, I'd like to spend what's left of the night alone with my wife. Nathan caught the hint, the smugness momentarily fading. Sure, my bad. He quickly headed for the door, leaving behind a faint scent of his cologne that seemed to mock me. Once he was gone, the air in the room seemed to crackle with an unspoken tension. I turned to Emily, my unease growing. Look, I'm sorry again. Next time Sheriff Peterson calls, I'll make sure someone else handles it." Emily just chuckled softly, a light, airy sound that didn't quite reach her eyes. She understood the life of an officer's wife. She said, "It's fine. We were just catching up. Nothing more." I wanted to believe her. I truly did. I had trusted Emily for more years than I could count. Our history a vast, sprawling tapestry of shared moments and unwavering loyalty. Yet those alarms ringing in my head refused to silence so easily. My gut screamed that something was wrong, even as my mind fought to dismiss it as exhaustion or paranoia. Little did I know, this was merely the beginning of a nightmare that would unravel everything I held dear. The subsequent couple of months were challenging, stretching my patience and testing the fragile bonds of our marriage. Emily and I managed to squeeze in just 2 dates without me being called away for duty, each one feeling forced and sterile. The tension between us was palpable, a thick, suffocating cloud that permeated every conversation. She was frustrated, her temper growing shorter, and so was I. But while I attributed it to the relentless demands of the job, the late-night calls, the canceled plans, the constant readiness for chaos, she blamed me. From her perspective, it wasn't my badge that took me away. It was my choice to prioritize it over her, a conscious act of neglect. And honestly, I couldn't even argue with that, because a part of me knew she was right, that I had allowed the job to consume me. Sophia, Nathan's wife, had also been absent more frequently ever since her parents moved to the city, often visiting them on weekends and leaving Nathan behind, seemingly alone. It never occurred to me that this absence was a deliberate opportunity, a gaping hole in our protective bubble. One Sunday morning, earlier than anticipated, Sophia returned. Before I even had my first coffee, the rich aroma barely reaching my nostrils, she was frantically calling my phone. "Detective Stone." I answered, my usual professional tone kicking in, instantly alert. "Alex, thank goodness," she exclaimed, breathless and panicked, her voice thin with barely contained hysteria. "I need you to come right now." "What's wrong?" I asked, my grip tightening on the receiver. "Just come to my house," she pleaded, the words tumbling out. Not our house, but hers. That was the first clear warning sign, a discordant note in the symphony of my crumbling world. I informed Sheriff Peterson I needed to step away, and although he gave me a strange, almost knowing look, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes, he waved me off and returned to his crossword puzzle. I didn't ask questions. I simply grabbed my keys and drove directly over, my mind racing through 1,000 possibilities, none of them good. When I pulled up, the sight of Emily's car parked casually out front hit me, like a physical blow, a punch to the gut that stole my breath. It was as if the air had been sucked out of my lungs, leaving me hollow. Sophia was pacing frantically on the front lawn, visibly shaken, her usually calm demeanor replaced by raw, unadulterated fear. Tears streamed down her face, leaving clean tracks on her pale cheeks. The warning bells in my head were no longer bells. They were blaring sirens, screaming at me, confirming my darkest fears. "Alex, thank goodness you're here," she said, practically collapsing into my arms. I steadied her, my own hands trembling. "Take a breath. Sophomore, tell me what's going on." She glanced nervously at Emily's car, her face drained of color, her eyes wide with terror. "You don't know?" she whispered, the words barely audible, as if she could barely process it herself. I frowned, my jaw clenched so tight it ached. "Don't know what? Why is my wife's car here? Sophia, what the hell happened?" Her wide, terrified eyes conveyed everything before she even spoke. "No, you don't know," she repeated, her voice laced with disbelief. My blood boiled, a cold, simmering rage that threatened to consume me. "What the hell is going on here, Sophia?" Then it hit me hard, the pieces clicking into place with sickening precision. Without another word, propelled by a primal urge, I stormed inside, my hand instinctively resting on my sidearm. the cold metal a familiar weight against my hip. I flung open the bedroom door, the sound echoing through the sudden silence. And there they were, frozen like children caught sneaking out after curfew. Emily and Nathan, tangled in the sheets of my bed, bathed in the morning light. My breath hitched. I lower my hand, slowly, deliberately reholstering my weapon. No need for that. Not yet. Instead, I calmly pulled out my phone, the screen blindingly bright, and began snapping pictures. The quiet clicks of the camera shutter were the only sounds in the room. I managed 4 shots before they even realized what was happening, before the shock wore off and panic set in. Emily scrambled to cover herself, her face contorted in a mixture of shame and horror. Alex, wait. I can explain. I ignored her, my eyes devoid of emotion, stepping back toward the hallway. Sophia. I called out, my voice surprisingly steady. Did you know about this? Tears welled up in her eyes again, fresh ones replacing the old. Yes, I thought you knew too. Emily told me you were aware, said you didn't mind her spending time with Nathan while you worked. The betrayal was a second, sharper blow. You thought I knew? I asked, trying to steady my breathing, to rein in the hurricane raging inside me. I wasn't happy about it, she admitted, her voice trembling, but I trusted her. I thought you did too. I only realized how far it had gone when I walked in today and saw that. I took a deep breath, the air burning my lungs, and an idea flickered, cold and calculated, in the back of my mind. All right, I said quietly, my voice deceptively calm. Soph, how about you come stay in my place for a while? Emily and Nathan both snapped at once, their voices a synchronized shout. No, you're not taking her anywhere. They practically shrieked in unison. Sophia looked at them, first at Nathan, then at Emily, with utter disdain, her eyes hardening. Then she turned to me, her gaze steady, and said without hesitation, "You know what? Yeah, take me." Nathan shot up, furious, his face flushed with rage. Hell no. He started toward me, his fists clenched, a vein throbbing in his temple. I raised my hand, a silent command, and didn't even have to unholster. My reputation, my presence, was enough. Back off, Nathan. Funny how you two have been playing house behind my back, but suddenly you've got opinions about where Sophia goes. Nathan clenched his fists tighter, but didn't move, held in check by the sheer force of my will. How long's it been? I asked him, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. How long have you been sleeping with my wife? Nathan's bravado cracked, crumbling like dry earth. 2 months, he muttered, his gaze falling to the floor. Since the night you got called to Brenda and Michael's. I nodded, the pieces of the puzzle fitting grimly together. Right figures. Emily reached out, desperate, her hand hovering in the air between us. Alex, please. I still love you. This was just, you still love me. I snapped, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. So you cheat on me, but still expect to keep me? Do you even hear yourself? I glanced at Sophia, dark hair, piercing green eyes that now held a new, steely resolve, standing there quietly dignified, her posture defiant. It hit me like a ton of bricks. I'd been blind, focusing so hard on Emily all these years that I'd barely noticed anyone else. Hadn't seen the quiet strength in Sophia. But now I saw Sophia differently, truly saw her for the first time. I looked back at Emily, her face still flushed with shame. You hate double standards, don't you? Well, here's one. If you can betray me with Nathan, why can't I return the favor with Sophia? Seems fair, doesn't it? Don't you dare. Nathan roared, stepping forward again, his voice raw with sudden fear. I held his stare without flinching, a dangerous glint in my own eyes. What's good for the goose, Nathan? Sophia smirked, a slow, predatory curve of her lips, wiping away her tears with the back of her hand. Yeah, I think I'd like to go. Emily exploded. This is ridiculous. You can't just... But Sophia ignored her, walking over to the dresser, her movements deliberate, unhurried. I'm grabbing a few things, Alex. I turned back to Emily, the raw anger churning in my gut. Tell me the truth. What's the real reason you? She spat, the words dripping with resentment. Your damn job. You're never around. Nathan is. So you took him into our bed to fix that? Emily flinched, the accusation hitting its mark. Shame began to creep in, replacing the anger, but it was too late, irrevocably so. Yes, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Great, I said, my voice flat, devoid of any warmth. Perfect for the bonfire. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. No more excuses, no more deflections. When were you going to tell me? I pressed, stepping closer, my voice gaining an edge. Or were you just hoping I'd keep being the fool? Tears ran down her cheeks now, thick and silent, a true breakdown. I still love you, Alex. I didn't want this. I shook my head, cutting her off. Don't kid yourself, Emily. You don't love me. Not if you could do this. Not if you could do this for 2 months. Sophia slammed the dresser drawer shut, the finality of the sound echoing in the room. I'm going with Alex. And Nathan, stay the hell away from me until I figure out what happens next. Neither of them had anything left to say, their faces frozen in disbelief and despair. And just like that, everything changed irrevocably. Sophia and I made it to my car without any further drama. The drive felt surreal, the silence punctuated only by the hum of the engine. But before we even reached the driveway in my place, my phone started blowing up, vibrating incessantly against my leg. Emily kept calling, her name flashing repeatedly on the screen, but I let it ring, ignoring the desperate pleas. The only call I answered was from Sheriff Peterson. Alex, you all right? Nathan just called me, Sheriff Peterson said, his voice laced with concern, but I detected an underlying tension, a hint of something he wasn't saying. Sheriff Peterson wasn't just my boss. He was Nathan's uncle and a longtime family friend of Miller's. Sir, I replied calmly, though my blood was boiling. Turns out your nephew has been playing house with my wife behind my back for 2 months. Sophia just clued me in. We're on the way to my place now. I'm taking the rest of the day and tomorrow off. To punctuate my words, I sent him a few of the photos I'd taken as proof, the damning evidence undeniable. There was a heavy sigh on the line, a sound of profound resignation. Damn, I was afraid something like this might happen. I slammed the brakes mentally, my mind screeching to a halt. Wait, you knew. I barked, my voice sharp with sudden fury. He paused, a long, agonizing silence. Alex, listen, save it. I snapped and ended the call without another word. I turned to Sophia, my eyes blazing. Did you know he knew? Her eyes widened in genuine shock, her jaw dropping. Hell no, she said, seething now, her voice raw with fresh anger. Unbelievable. The nerve of that man. Now she wasn't just upset. She was furious, and oddly enough, that shared fire in her voice stirred something in me. For the first time, I wasn't just looking at Sophia as my friend's wife. You're damn right we're going to get serious about this, I said with a smirk, a dark satisfaction curling in my gut. She caught my glance, and for a split second, the tension between us shifted, something new, unspoken, hanging in the air. But first, I had things to handle. As soon as we got to my house, the familiar brick facade offering no comfort, Emily's number flashed on my screen again. This time I picked up, the anger still a hot coal in my chest. What? I snapped, the single word a raw expression of my fury. Don't you dare! Alex Stone, she shouted, her voice shrill with hysteria. You better not lay a finger on her, or I'll file for divorce. I gritted my teeth, a mirthless laugh bubbling up. Emily, I've got photos. You know what that means in this state? Infidelity. You lose everything in a divorce. Custody, assets, reputation gone. Her silence was deafening, a sudden, stark realization of her precarious position. Finally, she whispered, Okay, then hung up the click of the phone final. I immediately texted her, Don't come home tonight. Then I dialed Mark, my cousin and the town's most trusted locksmith. He was family, and I knew I could count on him for discretion and speed. When he showed up, Sophia and I were sharing a quiet beer on the porch swing, the evening air cooling around us. "Hey, Mark," I greeted as he stepped out of his truck, his brow furrowed in question. "What's going on, man?" he asked, spotting Sophia and raising a brow, a silent question in his eyes. I gave him the short version, the bare bones of the betrayal, and told him to rekey the house. 3 sets only, one for me, one for Sophia, one spare. I leaned in conspiratorially. "And don't hand a key to Emily if she shows up asking for one. Not even if she begs." Mark chuckled, a low rumble in his chest. "Family first, brother. Consider it done." He went to work without another word, his tools clinking softly. Next, I made another call to the furniture store. I ordered a brand new king-size double bed to replace the one Emily and I had been sharing, the one now tainted by Nathan's presence. When the movers arrived, efficient and silent, Sophia stayed quiet, perched on the edge of the couch, watching as they dismantled the old bed, its frames stripped bare and tossed into a heap out back, just as I'd requested, a symbolic act of purging. The new one wasn't cheap, a sleek, modern frame with a plush mattress, but it felt necessary, a foundation for a new beginning. I had more than just revenge on my mind. I had a plan, actually several plans, intricate and layered, and I prayed I wouldn't need the violent ones. By late afternoon, Mark handed me the new keys, a satisfying weight in my palm. I gave one to Sophia with a playful wink, and to my surprise, she returned it with a shy, genuine smile, a spark in her green eyes. When the movers finished, I settled up, then made one last call to my sister, Chloe, who happened to run the local bank. Chloe wasn't exactly Emily's biggest fan. She'd always been quietly protective of me, always seeing through Emily's occasional manipulations. "I need a new account, Chloe. Monday morning, transfer 75% from the joint accounts. I'll explain later, but consider it an emergency." "About time," she said, half joking, half serious, a knowing tone in her voice. "Consider done, Alex. Anything for my little brother." With the house now secured, the outsiders gone, and Sophia still sitting quietly beside me, the atmosphere shifted, the immediate chaos giving way to a strange, almost peaceful calm. We weren't rushing anything. I didn't drag her straight to bed. Instead, we settled into the living room, the quiet hum of the air conditioning effectively locking the world outside. "Sophia," I said, breaking the comfortable silence, my voice serious. "Seriously, what we're about to do here, it's revenge, plain and simple. A painful, messy divorce. You realize that, right?" She nodded, her gaze steady, confirming her resolve. "I know, but before we go further, I need you to understand something." My voice softened as I took her hand gently, tracing the lines of her palm. "Soph, you've put up with too much for too long. Why didn't you leave him? After everything he's done, even before this?" Tears welled up in her eyes, but she blinked them back, her resolve unwavering. "He controls everything, Alex. The bank accounts, the house, even my car. He said if I walked, I'd get nothing, that he'd make sure I was left destitute. He's got every lawyer in his back pocket, he told me." I gritted my teeth, a surge of renewed anger pulsing through me. "He's feeding you lies, Sophia. Scare tactics. Listen to me. Do you want out? Truly out? Forget the money. Forget him. Forget the threats. Yes or no, do you want out?" "Yes," she said without hesitation, her voice firm, resolute. Not just because of the cheating. Her voice cracked as she rolled up her sleeve, revealing a dark, angry bruise blossoming on her inner arm, a sickening purple against her pale skin. It was undeniable, unmistakable. I swore into my breath, my hands clenching in a fist. That son of a... I caught myself, my rage momentarily stifled by a wave of protective fury. "Sophia, you're getting out of this. You're getting free. I'll make sure of it. no matter what it takes. Reality hit hard, crushing the last vestiges of my previous naivete. This wasn't just about betrayal. It was about survival, about escaping a deeply toxic and abusive situation. And Nathan? He wasn't walking away clean from this. I'm no rookie, Soph, I said firmly, my detective instincts kicking in. Tomorrow, I'll call a lawyer from Emily's rival firm, one that Nathan doesn't control. Sheriff Peterson can't fire me, even if he wants to. I've got leverage now. I've got Sheriff Peterson's dirty little secret. He knew about you too and kept me on duty anyway, effectively enabling the affair. Sophia wiped her tears, her eyes glistening with something I hadn't seen all day. Hope, tentative but real. Alex, she whispered, her voice full of a fragile disbelief. Would you really help me? Even after all this? Even after I was caught up in their mess? Absolutely, I said without hesitation, my voice unwavering. You had no idea about the true depths of his manipulation, about the abuse. I didn't know you were dragged into this mess too, that you were trapped. But now that we both know, we're going to handle it together. We're going to expose him for what he is. I leaned back, a small, genuine smile touching my lips. And I like you, Sophia. I've liked you for years, if I'm honest. You've always been one of the few people who's never let me down, who's always shown genuine kindness. Her blush deepened, a soft flush across her cheeks, and her eyes sparkled. Alex, you've always been good to me, even when I felt trapped, when I felt invisible. I nodded. Starting tomorrow, you're going to get free of him. With the photos I have, the bruises you're carrying, and the sheriff's complicity, you'll have a case strong enough to bring the whole damn courthouse to its knees, to expose Nathan for the abusive monster he truly is. For the first time all day, she smiled genuinely, a radiant, beautiful smile that melted away some of the day's darkness. You really think we can do this? You think we can take him down? I grinned, a fierce determination in my eyes. Oh, we're past Ken. It's happening, and it's going to be glorious. She laughed softly, a bright, clear sound. Guess I'm about to get my revenge. The real kind, not just the petty kind. No, this wasn't just payback anymore. This was about taking back control, about justice for two wronged souls. And for the first time, I saw Sophia in a light I hadn't before. Strong, determined, and absolutely worth fighting for. Just as we were settling in, the comfortable silence enveloping us, my phone buzzed, vibrating insistently. I had already switched it to vibrate, so it wouldn't disturb the newfound peace. One glance, and of course it was Emily. I chuckled bitterly, a harsh, unamused sound, and picked up, "What now, Emily?" I asked, not bothering to hide my irritation, my voice flat and cold. "Alex, we can still fix this. Please, let's talk," she whined, her voice thin and desperate. That whiny tone had always grated on me, a minor annoyance I'd learned to tolerate, but now it felt unbearable, like nails on a chalkboard. "Oh yeah? Does fixing this include you quitting the cheating? Does it include you apologizing to Sophia for lying to her face?" I shot back, the words laced with acid. There was a pause, a stunned silence on her end. I didn't even wait. I ended the call and powered the phone off before she could try again, cutting her off completely. "What did she say?" Sophia asked, watching me carefully, her green eyes full of curiosity. I shrugged, dismissing it. "She said enough." Sophia sighed, a long, weary exhalation. "We need to figure out what's next. I can't go back to Nathan. Not after this. Not after knowing he planned for me to think you were okay with it. Truth is, I haven't been happy with him for a long time. This just made me realize how done I am." As the anger from earlier simmered, it shifted into something sharper, more focused. Sheriff Peterson, that scoundrel, had manipulated this entire situation. He knew about Nathan and Emily, yet he kept me busy and out of the way, directing me to calls he knew would take time. And Emily? She could have shut this down at any point, confessed, stopped it. She chose not to. We'd both been betrayed, But somehow I still ended up the bigger fool, blindsided by their elaborate scheme. I share my thoughts with Sophia, and guilt flickered across her face. "I'm sorry, Alex," she whispered, gently brushing her fingers across my cheek, a soft, comforting touch. "I should have told you. I was just so scared of him." "But tell me something," I pressed, needing to understand the full extent of Emily's deception. When Emily said I was okay with all this, how exactly did she put it? What lie did she spin? I needed to know what kind of web of deceit Emily had woven. "She told me you, and I felt the same," Sophia said, her voice laced with bitterness. "That even if we didn't like it, we both accepted it because you understood she had needs that you couldn't fulfill due to your job." She made it sound like a mutually agreed upon arrangement, a quiet understanding between all of us. My blood boiled, but I forced myself to stay calm, to channel the rage into resolve. "I'll handle this," I said, my voice dangerously low. "Time to put my detective badge to good use, Sophia. This is going to be big." I laid out a rough plan, sketching it out on a napkin. Sophia listened intently, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and admiration, then gave me a half laugh, half sigh. "You're a devious son of a gun, Alex Stone," she said with a mischievous spark, a playful glint in her eyes, "but I love you anyway." My heart fluttered. "And you, Sophia Miller, are every bit the goddess I've always suspected you were," I said without hesitation, the words coming naturally. "And I love you too." We spent the rest of the day together, a strange mix of planning and quiet intimacy. After freshening up, shedding the grime of the day's revelations, we ended up in the kitchen, where Sophia made dinner. Succulent pork chops with roasted vegetables, all seasoned better than any meal I could remember, a symphony of flavors I hadn't realized I was missing. I complimented her cooking, genuinely surprised by her culinary prowess. I even joked that she put Emily's kitchen skills to shame, a jab at the past that felt surprisingly good. Later that evening, we sat at the table, mapping out our next moves, each step precise and calculated. The more we talked, the more I realized something strange. I didn't hate Emily anymore. I resented her, sure, the pain of her betrayal a dull ache, but somehow the fiery anger felt duller now, replaced by a cold determination. Maybe because in the mess of it all, she had unknowingly pushed Sophia and me together, leading me to something truer. But then, like clockwork, the image of Emily and Nathan in my bed flashed back in my mind, vivid and sickening, and the anger returned, sharp as ever, cutting through any semblance of peace. I swore she wouldn't get a single thing from me beyond what the court ordered after those photos hit the courtroom. That night, Sophia and I fell asleep tangled in each other's arms, the weight of her head on my chest, her soft breaths a comforting rhythm. Emily always hated cuddling, always needing her space, but Sophia, she fit perfectly beside me, like that's where she was always meant to be, a missing piece I hadn't known I was searching for. If there was any silver lining, it was that neither of us had children to complicate the fallout. Emily always claimed we weren't ready, wanting to save more before trying for a baby. Sophia, on the other hand, had absolutely no interest in having kids with Nathan, and after the last 2 months, she was profoundly grateful for it. Sophia worked as a real estate agent, and with the market booming, she was doing well, having built a solid clientele. The trick now was figuring out how to access her share of their joint accounts and untangle her finances from Nathan's pervasive control. I wanted Chloe, my sister, to help, but I didn't want her dragged too deep into this if it backfired. Not when I had a perfectly good legal resource available. Thankfully, Sophia had meticulously kept all her pay stubs, tax returns, and transaction records, enough to build a strong case for her equitable share of their marital assets. With our plan shaping up, refined and precise, we hit the road early the next morning and headed straight to see Ben, my brother-in-law, Chloe's husband, and one hell of a lawyer. He agreed to take both of our divorce cases practically for free, a gesture of familial loyalty. In truth, He was thrilled. Nathan had once made an inappropriate pass at Chloe years ago, a crude, drunken remark at a town party, and Ben had never forgotten it. Ben drafted the papers immediately, his pen scratching furiously across the legal pads. I handed over the photos and outlined everything Sophia and I knew, including Nathan's verbal admission of the 2-month affair and the detailed account of his abuse. The timestamps on the photos and Nathan's own admissions would be enough to give us significant leverage, painting a clear picture of infidelity and cruelty. Ben promised to prepare everything for service by the next day and even dig up more dirt on Nathan and Emily while he was at it, promising to leave no stone unturned. By Tuesday, Sophia and I were standing inside Sheriff Peterson's office, the air thick with unspoken tension. "Morning, Pete," I greeted as calm as could be, my voice flat and even, with Sophia right behind me, her presence a silent, powerful statement. He looked up from his desk, startled, clueless at first as to why we were there together. I slid my phone across his desk, the screen displaying the damning photos queued up, vibrant and undeniable. "Give it a second," I said, a dangerous undertone in my voice. "It'll make sense." I turned to Sophia, a silent command in my eyes. "Show him." Without flinching, Sophia pulled back her sleeve, revealing the angry, dark bruise on her arm, a stark testament to Nathan's violence. "Nathan does this," she said flatly, her voice devoid of emotion, her eyes meeting his directly. "It's a regular thing, but this time I'm pressing charges. And you, Sheriff, are going to help me." Sheriff Peterson shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his face paling, his gaze darting between the photos and Sophia's arm. "Maybe you banged into enough." I cut him off sharply, my voice a whip crack. "You're going to arrest Nathan today. Then you're going to march yourself over to the district attorney's office and file the charges properly. No strings attached, no quiet deals. Otherwise, those photos, the ones of my wife and your nephew in my bed, they'll be on every bulletin board in town hall, plastered on the internet, and on every local news channel before sundown. And that's just for starters." Sheriff Peterson knew I wasn't bluffing. He could see the steel in my eyes. I leaned in, my voice dropping to a low, menacing tone. "And before we're done, you're going to tell me exactly how deep you are in this. If you don't, I'll make sure your name gets tied to this whole dirty mess, your complicity exposed to the entire town. No more hiding behind badges and bloodlines. Pete, your reputation, your career, hangs by a thread." He paled, the color draining from his face. I could see it. The weight of this was finally sinking in, and I wasn't backing down, not an inch. Sheriff Peterson was visibly restless, squirming in his chair, his usual calm demeanor shattered. I noticed the tension the second I stepped in, and quietly, instinctively, I activated the recorder hidden in my pocket, just in time for him to start pouring it all out. He admitted that he had royally screwed up, that he'd made a grave error in judgment. The whole thing, according to him, was a mistake he deeply regretted, a lapse in professional and personal ethics. Sheriff Peterson explained how Nathan, Mayor David Miller, and even Judge Sterling, whose daughter was engaged to Nathan's cousin, creating a tangled web of family ties, had pressured him into keeping me conveniently out of the way. Nathan had convinced him that he and Emily were truly in love, but didn't want to break up the marriage, only to continue their affair discreetly. Instead, they just wanted me to stay distracted enough to let them sneak around without suspicion. Sheriff Peterson, claiming he trusted that Nathan and Emily had worked it out with me, had gone along with it, rationalizing his complicity as merely facilitating a private arrangement. What hit hardest wasn't even that they lied. It was that Sheriff Peterson, someone I considered a mentor, a close friend, almost family, went along willingly, betraying my trust for the sake of the Miller family's reputation. He swore that Sophia knew about the affair, that Emily had assured him Sophia was fully aware and accepting, so he simply assumed I knew too. His voice cracked with regret, his eyes pleading for understanding, but it was too late for regrets, too late for excuses. I always thought you were family, Pete, I said coldly, my voice flat, devoid of warmth. Guess I got that wrong. The more I listened, the clearer it became. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about setting things right, about exposing a deeply entrenched network of corruption and deceit. When I pressed him about who else was involved, Sheriff Peterson panicked for a second, his eyes darting around the room. He knew there was no point in lying. I had him dead to rights. Nathan, Mayor Miller, and a couple more on Nathan's side. People at town hall who owed the mayor favors, he finally admitted, his voice barely a whisper. That told me everything. The whole rotten inner circle was in on it, actively protecting Nathan and his father. I didn't flinch. Mayor Miller knew. I stated, not a question, but a cold, hard fact. Judge Sterling too, right? Sheriff Peterson, cornered, defeated, gave a slow, reluctant nod. I already knew what to do with this information. Their wives were going to find out. Martha Miller had been a friend of my parents for years, a quiet, dignified woman who deserved the truth about her husband's and son's depravity. And even though Judge Sterling's wife, Eleanor Miller, had never been my favorite person, a bit of a social climber, she didn't deserve to be left in the dark either. Before I could even process my next move, my phone buzzed. Emily, of course. I picked up calmly, my voice professional and detached. Detective Stone. Emily sounded sweet, almost casual, asking if I was still at work, her usual attempts at manipulation. I told her I was finishing paperwork with Sheriff Peterson, a subtle hint of the severity of the situation. Then she dropped the line I wasn't expecting, saying she still loved me and knew I still loved her. And damn it, for a second, I realized she wasn't entirely wrong. I still felt something, a residual affection, a ghost of the deep connection we once shared, but it wasn't enough, not anymore. The foundation was gone. I agreed to meet. You can come by, I said, my voice carefully neutral, but I changed the locks. Sophia is with me today, staying at the house. Emily hesitated, a beat of stunned silence on the line, and simply said, fine, before hanging up, the desperation returning to her voice. I turned back to Sheriff Peterson, cutting through the heavy silence. So, it's just you, Nathan, Mayor Miller, and the judge's inner circle. He nodded, resignation etched onto his face. That's everyone, Alex. I swear. Then he tried making small talk with Sophia, a desperate attempt to appear normal, but I cut him off sharply. He didn't need to know more about her. Not now. Not while she was still a potential witness and victim. I reminded him that Nathan had been keeping Sophia financially trapped and that Sheriff Peterson was going to send every scrap of evidence to the district attorney. No exceptions, no more favors for the Miller family. Without arguing, Sheriff Peterson, now fully broken, got to work. He meticulously documented Sophia's bruises, taking detailed notes and photographs. He uploaded the photos I provided, along with his own confession, and prepared the case with a grim determination. He promised to deliver everything to the district attorney right after arresting Nathan, swearing he would handle it discreetly, keeping the initial arrest quiet to prevent public outcry before the full story emerged. I made it clear, you'll have to. I don't trust anyone else in this town to do the right thing, Pete. Not yet. Sheriff Peterson's voice dropped, laced with shame. He admitted he couldn't defend Nathan's actions. Not after what he did to me or to Sophia. Not after discovering the abuse. He promised he'd see it through. But this time, I wasn't leaving it up to him alone. No more sweeping anything under the rug. Not anymore. The full truth was coming out. Sheriff Peterson's words, his confession, still lingered in my head as I left the precinct. I'd known Pete practically all my life, respected him, trusted him, until yesterday. Now all I saw was betrayal buried under layers of guilt and fear. I told him I believed him, a hollow promise, shook his hand, and made it clear that my next step was to deal with Emily and get her out of my house. Sheriff Peterson asked if I'd be around tomorrow, his voice tinged with a desperate hope for normalcy. But I informed him I was officially taking a 5-day vacation, effective immediately, and wouldn't be back until Monday. He gave me a small nod, his eyes weary, and I could tell he hoped things would settle by the time I returned. What he didn't know was that I wasn't even close to finished. As promised, I had already scheduled emails to Mayor David Miller and Mrs. Martha Miller, each containing every damning JPEG I had, every piece of evidence from the affair. There were time-to-hit inboxes just as Sheriff Peterson cuffed his nephew, ensuring maximum impact. When Sophia and I pulled up to the house, the familiar sight of Emily's car, now a symbol of her betrayal, was still parked in the driveway. Emily was already there, standing by the door, her arms crossed, a defiant look on her face that quickly morphed into shock as she saw us. Sophia and I walked up hand in hand, our fingers intertwined, a silent statement. It was impossible to miss the raw jealousy flashing across Emily's face, quickly masked by a sneer. Sophia greeted her without hesitation, her voice calm and level, asking if she liked her husband, a pointed remark. Emily, with that same old smirk, threw back an insult, calling Sophia a floozy, typical, predictable, and utterly unoriginal. I found myself, for the first time, looking at them side by side and realizing how much more radiant Sophia seemed, not just physically, but in every way that mattered. Her strength, her resilience, her quiet dignity. I calmly reminded Emily of her hypocrisy, my voice steady, pointing out that if she hadn't betrayed me with Nathan, I wouldn't be standing there holding Sophia's hand, that her choices had led directly to this moment. That silenced her immediately, the smirk vanishing, replaced by a dawning comprehension. I didn't stop. I told her there wasn't anything left to discuss, no debate to be had. I reminded her that instead of owning up to her betrayal, she chose to attack me, my job, and my character, fabricating lies about my knowledge and consent. She wasn't interested in fixing anything. She was only interested in justifying herself, in painting herself as a victim. Emily broke down sobbing, her carefully constructed facade crumbling. She apologized through the tears, genuinely crumbling in front of us, the weight of her actions finally crushing her. I'd only seen her cry like that a few times in our decade together, truly broken, but this wasn't one of those situations where tears would change a thing. She admitted she ruined everything, but in truth, she didn't just ruin it, she destroyed it, obliterated our life together. I calmly informed her that Nathan hadn't only betrayed me, but that he'd been beating Sophia too, a vicious cycle of control and violence that went beyond mere infidelity. I motioned to Sophia, who quietly, deliberately pulled back her sleeve, showing the angry bruise on her arm. The realization hit Emily like a brick wall, her eyes widening in horror, her sobs hitching. She stammered that she had no idea, that she was horrified, truly shocked by the extent of Nathan's depravity. Sophia, surprisingly, brushed it off with a weary sigh and told Emily not to worry about it anymore, that it was her burden, not Emily's. She made it clear that she was finally going to do what she should have done long ago. Divorce Nathan and take him for everything he was worth, every last penny. I backed her up, my voice firm. Me too, I added, looking Emily dead in the eyes, ensuring she understood the depth of my resolve. It was time to lay it all out, plainly and unequivocally. I told Emily that we were finished, irrevocably so, and that I was going after 75% of the assets, the vast majority of our shared wealth. She could keep her car, I'd keep mine, and she'd have enough for a down payment on a place of her own, a clean break. But if she pushed me, if she even thought about dragging this out in court, if she caused a single moment of trouble, those photos would find their way to every family member and friend we had, every colleague, every acquaintance. I left no doubt. I'd prefer a clean ending, a quiet resolution, but I wasn't afraid to get ugly if I had to burn her reputation to the ground. Emily, still sniffling, whispered that she loved me, a desperate, final plea. I shut it down immediately, my voice hard. I told her plainly that love without respect meant nothing, that her betrayal had hollowed out any lingering affection. As far as I was concerned, I divorced her the moment I saw her and Nathan together in my bed. The court paperwork was just the final nail in the coffin, a legal formality for a death that had already occurred. I added that my lawyer already had the evidence and that it would be in court first thing tomorrow, ready to be filed. Then I asked the only thing left. Would she agree to the divorce, no fuss, no fight? Eyes downcast, voice hollow, barely audible, she simply said yes. I thanked her, though the words felt like dust in my mouth, tasting of ash. I offered her a practical solution, a small mercy, to gather her things and avoid Nathan's place for now, considering he'd just been arrested for domestic violence and would likely be out on bail soon. She nodded, agreeing, her shoulders slumped in defeat. She quietly asked where she was supposed to go now, her voice small and lost. I told her that the joint account was still hers, minus the 75% I had legally moved to my new account, and that there was enough left for a new apartment and some breathing room, enough to start over. I wished her well, a final, weary gesture. Honestly, as much as I wanted to hate her, to cling to the anger, I couldn't. We had too much history, too many shared memories. But forgiveness? That was never coming. Emily's face fell further. I could see the full weight of it all landing on her shoulders, the magnitude of her loss, but I stayed firm. Part of me, a tiny, wounded part, still wanted to comfort her, to pretend we could patch things up, to revert to the comforting illusion of our past. But deep down, I knew better. If she truly loved me, she never would have crossed that line. As I stood there, watching her, I realized she might still be beautiful in the eyes of many. But to me, the spell was broken, irrevocably so. By the time Sophia and I finished helping Emily pack up her things, the entire house felt like a moving truck had exploded inside it. Every closet, dresser, nightstand, vanity, and bathroom shelf had been emptied, leaving gaping, empty spaces that echoed the void in my life. Piles of suitcases, cardboard boxes, and laundry bags now sat haphazardly in the living room, most of them crammed with Emily's stuff, an overwhelming monument to a decade of accumulation. What was supposed to be a quick task ended up dragging on all day, an exhausting, emotionally draining marathon. It was way too late to help her find a new place, and frankly, neither of us had the energy left to try. We both collapsed onto the couch, surrounded by chaos, dust motes dancing in the dimming light. Sophia, with a surprising lightness, handed me and Emily each a cold beer before settling comfortably on my lap. And without meaning to, I let out a small, weary chuckle. I didn't realize you had so much stuff, I said, half laughing, half sighing. Emily just shrugged with a distant look, her eyes scanning the wreckage of her possessions. There was no anger in her expression, just a profound sadness, the quiet realization of everything she was leaving behind, a life packed into boxes. She mentioned that she had been living here for over a decade and never threw anything away unless it was absolutely useless, a habit I knew well. I already knew that about her, had always found it endearing, but hearing it now felt different, sadder, like a final elegy to our shared past. I decided to offer her at least one mercy, one final act of kindness. Emily, you can crash in the guest room tonight. Just pack the car tomorrow and deal with the rest then. No need to rush into anything. Sophia leaned in, her lips brushing my ear, and whispered if that was really a good idea, a hint of concern in her voice, but I shrugged. I didn't hate Emily. I couldn't, even if I wanted to, even after everything. I didn't love her anymore. That bond was severed, but I still cared, or at least cared enough to give her one final night under the roof that used to be ours, to let her gather herself. Emily, trying to hold herself together, quietly accepted, a flicker of gratitude in her tired eyes. She even asked if we could just sign the divorce papers tomorrow at the lawyer's office instead of dragging this out. Her voice laced with desperation for a swift end. I hesitated. Part of me, the vengeful part, wanted to make her sweat, to really feel what she did to me, to experience the agonizing slowness of the process. But when I looked at her, at the shell of the woman I used to love, I realized she was already drowning, consumed by despair. I asked Sophia for her opinion, a silent agreement forming between us. Without hesitation, she said Emily had suffered enough, that a quick resolution would probably work out fine, and that it would be best for everyone involved. I agreed. All right, Emily, tomorrow we go to Ben's office. You'll sign, and we'll ask the judge to finalize it as quickly as possible. At least there would be no counseling, no custody battles, just signatures and a clean break, a final severance. Emily gave a weak, relieved smile, a fragile ghost of her former self. She knew I could have made it worse, could have dragged her through months, even years, of painful litigation. Truthfully, the worst was still to come, and not for me. She glanced around the living room, her gaze lingering on the empty space where the old bed used to be. I see you've already replaced the bed, she murmured, a faint tremor in her voice. I grinned, a deliberate, unapologetic flash of teeth. Yeah, figure it was time for an upgrade. Although if I'd known Sophia likes to cuddle, I squeezed Sophia closer, who blushed but leaned into me. I might have picked something smaller, more intimate. Emily visibly flinched, the casual cruelty of my words hitting their mark. She wasn't used to me playing the sharp edge so directly, to me being anything but predictable and kind. Her voice wavered, thin and fragile. I guess I wasn't such a good wife, was I? I didn't sugarcoat it, not anymore. You were, until you picked Nathan Miller, of all people. You knew exactly how I felt about him, how he always tried to flirt with you, how much I despised his arrogance. You knew, and you chose him anyway. And now the clock's ticking. When this divorce is done, I suggest you leave town fast. Don't look back. Fear flickered across her face, genuine, raw fear. What are you saying, Alex? What's going to happen? I'm saying there's a storm coming, Emily. A big one. When a mayor lets his own son wreck another man's home, covers up for him, and turns a blind eye, people notice. Consequences are coming for them, and maybe not illegal ones at first, but consequences nonetheless. Their dirty laundry is about to air. I was bluffing, of course, at least partly. I wasn't going to expose Sheriff Peterson. He still had a soul, and that counted for something, and he was cooperating now. But I needed Emily to believe it, to understand the true depth of the Miller family's machinations. I laid it on thick, explaining how the mayor had conveniently scheduled me for Friday nights and busy Sundays, knowing full well that Nathan was exploiting those gaps, using my professional dedication against me. Emily's eyes widened, and reality hit her like a freight train, the full scope of their manipulation finally dawning on her. Nathan used his own father to set us both up, she muttered, the words hollow. It all started to click for her. Nathan didn't just inherit the role of town's biggest jerk. He learned it from the best. The mayor himself, a puppet master manipulating everyone around him. Before things could spiral further, before Emily could descend into another spiral of self-pity or accusation, I called Ben. I told him there was a change of plans. Emily would be coming by tomorrow to sign the papers. No delays. Ben agreed. But he warned me to make sure Emily brought her own lawyer to avoid complications, a standard legal precaution. I relayed the message to her. She nodded quietly, showing no signs of protest, her fight completely gone. After finishing our beers, the last vestiges of our old life, Sophia and I retreated to the bedroom while Emily took the guest room, the house falling into an uneasy quiet. As Sophia shut the door behind us, a strange calm settled over me. For the first time since this nightmare began, I wasn't looking backward. I had this quiet, certain feeling. This bed wasn't just temporary. Sophia and this might just be the start of something permanent, something real and lasting. The next morning, Emily wasted no time. She called her lawyer and arranged to meet us at Ben's office. Once we got there and laid everything out, the betrayal, the undeniable evidence, the damning photos, her attorney kept a poker face, but it was clear he wasn't thrilled with what he saw. He knew instantly that his client had no leverage. After going through the documents, he slid them back to Emily and simply said, his voice clipped and professional, "This is the best you're going to get him. Take it and walk away. Don't fight it." And to her credit, she did. 30 days later, after the mandatory waiting period, the divorce was official, finalized with a judge's signature. But ending things with Emily wasn't the real fight. The real battle was just getting started, and it wasn't about broken vows. It was about power, corruption, and systemic abuse. Nathan Miller, his father the mayor, and Sheriff Peterson were all tangled up in it, hiding behind town hall's respectable facade, wielding their influence to protect their own. Fortunately, I had a secret tool. Martha Miller, the mayor's wife and Nathan's mother, responded to the letter I'd sent, the one packed with undeniable proof of Nathan's infidelity and her husband's complicity. Eleanor Miller, the judge's wife, stayed quiet, a sly smile on her face whenever I saw her. I figured she was probably cooking up her own version of justice behind the scenes, her own quiet revenge. In court, Judge Sterling, visibly uncomfortable, reviewed the evidence. Nathan's skeletons finally tumbled out of the closet, including a hidden arrest record for assault, freshly discovered thanks to Martha herself, who had pointed investigators to an old, buried incident. He was slapped with house arrest without bail, the judge citing flight risk and public danger. He avoided jail time for the current domestic charges, but house arrest and public shame were enough for now, a temporary victory. Ben, now representing Sophia in her divorce, went directly after Nathan's substantial trust fund, his primary source of income. Nathan, like the fool he was, tried to resist the divorce, making demands and threatening countersuits, giving Ben every excuse to bring out the big tools, subpoenas, depositions, and a full forensic audit of Nathan's finances. By the time Nathan pleaded guilty to lesser charges of aggravated assault and harassment against Sophia, he was still stuck under house arrest and watching his finances slowly drain, tied up in litigation. Not perfect, but satisfyingly debilitating. Sophia was living with me full-time now, her quiet strength a constant comfort. And while I was at the station finishing paperwork, the mundane duties of my job, she called to let me know Martha Miller was sitting in our living room, sipping coffee. I told Sheriff Peterson, and he just gave me a knowing nod. No surprise there. He had anticipated Martha's reaction. When I got home, I found Sophia and Martha calmly sipping coffee like it was any other Tuesday, chatting like old friends. Martha greeted me with a half smile and thanked me for the letter, her voice steady and resolute. If I had known my son and husband were up to this, if I had any idea of their depravity, I would have shut it down myself years ago, she said, her eyes filled with a weary sorrow, but also a new determination. I reassured her that very few people actually knew what had been going on, that their circle of corruption was tightly knit. Blaming herself wouldn't do any good. But Martha's demeanor hardened, a steel spine emerging. She confessed that not only did her husband and brother-in-law know, but so did Sheriff Peterson, and that Nathan, her own son, had gone too far this time, seducing another man's wife and manipulating half the town into covering for him. She swore she'd do whatever it took to help me and Sophia bring them down. Sophia gave her a heartfelt hug, grateful for the unexpected ally, a woman who chose truth over family loyalty. Martha then asked if Ben might be willing to handle her own divorce, her decision firm. I said I was sure Ben could be convinced, especially given the circumstances. Martha, with a soft chuckle, insisted I call her by her first name now, discarding the formality. She didn't blink when I hinted that Sophia and I were more than just roommates, understanding the complex path that led us here. In fact, she told us straight, after what Nathan and Emily did to us, we deserve some happiness, a fresh start. Sure, I could have gone for a lawsuit against Nathan, his father, and even Sheriff Peterson, alienation of affection, maybe even conspiracy to defraud. But most of the time, those cases were a waste of time, dragging on for years with uncertain outcomes. I had other plans, far worse for Nathan and his dear dad, plans that would inflict maximum public and political damage. After piecing everything together, the picture became clear. Mayor David Miller wasn't just passively involved. He was the architect, the mastermind behind the scheme. The man used his power, his influence, to meticulously assign me to night shifts and weekend calls, leaving Emily wide open for Nathan, creating opportunities for the affair. I considered adding bribery and conspiracy charges to the list for the judge and mayor, but the judge, while morally weak, hadn't technically committed a crime beyond silence and turning a blind eye. Emily, for her part, left town soon after the divorce was finalized. I heard her boss pulled some strings to get her a paralegal job in another city. A smart move considering the storm that was about to hit, a storm of public outrage and federal investigation. Sheriff Peterson, to his credit, cooperated fully, perhaps hoping to salvage what little reputation he had left. He even apologized to my sister, Chloe, admitting that the mayor had subtly threatened his job if he didn't play along, a veiled threat against his pension and future. For all his flaws, Sheriff Peterson was still a solid sheriff, a good lawman at heart, unlike whatever clown the mayor would have installed in his place. Not long after, Sheriff Peterson and Martha joined Sophia and me for dinner over fried chicken, courtesy of Sophia, who somehow managed to be both an incredible cook and the best partner I'd ever had. We talked about what came next, the final phase of our plan. Pete still had that old guilt in his eyes, but he listened carefully as I laid out the plan. The deadline was moving up. We were going to hit Mayor David Miller hard, legally and publicly, leaving no stone unturned. Before the night ended, I called Ben to get status update. His private investigator had dug up plenty of dirt, enough to finally bring down the so-called honorable mayor and his golden boy son. Martha, for the first time in years, looked truly at peace, a quiet satisfaction on her face. For years, she had blamed herself for how Nathan turned out, for his arrogance and entitlement. But after we reassured her that Nathan was his father's creation, not hers, that the mayor had molded him into this monster, she finally let herself believe it. She even opened up about how her husband had changed over the years, morphing from a kind-hearted public servant into a ruthless manipulator, obsessed with power. She wasn't the only one who'd see him for who he really was. Pretty soon, the entire town would. They say power corrupts, but watching Mayor Miller at work, I knew that absolute power doesn't just corrupt, it rots from the inside out, consuming everything in its path. For him, control wasn't about politics, it was about owning people, about wielding absolute dominion over their lives. Using Nathan as a puppet, he proved that even marriage vows, sacred as they were no obstacle to his schemes. As twisted as it sounds, I almost pitted Emily when I realized she'd been just another pawn in his twisted game, manipulated as easily as I was. But any sympathy died the moment Ben played us the recording he got from the private investigator. Hearing it made me sick to my stomach, a cold dread seeping into my bones. The conversation wasn't subtle. The mayor coldly ordered Nathan to just give Sophia what she wanted, but then to run her out of town, making it sound like a permanent, fatal removal. Nathan pushed back, insisting Sophia was his to do with as he pleased, to humiliate and torment. Mayor Miller, unfazed, told him to lay low and promised he'd handle me personally, firing me if necessary and dragging Sophia down with me, silencing her forever. The worst part? He openly admitted to manipulating Sheriff Peterson, keeping me out of the picture while Nathan preyed on Emily, using her as a tool to distract me. Nathan, blind with entitlement, even accused his father of failing to correct Sophia earlier, blaming him for letting her slip away from his grasp. Ben, stop the tape. The silence that followed was deafening. "That's collusion," Sheriff Peterson said, his voice a low growl, breaking the silence. "Conspiracy to obstruct justice, abuse of power. And if a good prosecutor gets a hold of that, it's easily conspiracy to commit murder, given the language." Ben simply nodded, grim-faced. Then Pete turned to me, his eyes burning with a fierce resolve. "Care to do the honors, son? It's time to put these animals down." I grinned, a cold, hard smile, and checked my weapon, the familiar weight of comfort in my hand. "With pleasure." Turning to Sophia, I softened, pulling her close. "You stay here with Ben. Pete and I are about to put down some rabid dogs, and I don't want you anywhere near it." Sophia gripped me tight, her fingers digging into my arm, kissing me like it might be the last time, a desperate, passionate kiss. "Be careful. I love you. I love you too," I whispered back, my lips brushing her hair. Without wasting a second, Sheriff Peterson and I climbed into his cruiser, lights and sirens blaring as we sped towards the opulent Miller estate, the symbol of their unchecked power. On the way, he secured an arrest warrant from Judge Sterling, thanks to the undeniable taped confession. The judge, now aware of the depth of the Miller's depravity, was quick to comply. When we arrived, we cut the sirens, letting the darkness and silence of the night conceal our approach. We rolled up quietly, moving like ghosts through the moonlit grounds. Inside, the mayor and Nathan were finishing dinner, clinking glasses, completely unaware of the storm about to break. Sheriff Peterson, a man reborn, kicked in the front door like the old-school sheriff he truly was, the sound echoing through the grand foyer. The mayor stood up, stunned, his face going pale. "What the hell is this, Sheriff?" Nathan's face drained of color as soon as he saw Sheriff Peterson's .44 and my .357 aimed directly at them, the cold steel barrels glinting in the dim light. I kept Nathan locked down, my weapon steady, while Sheriff Peterson advanced on the mayor, his voice booming with righteous indignation. "David Miller, you and your son are under arrest for conspiracy to obstruct justice, abuse of power, and conspiracy to commit murder," Sheriff Peterson announced, giving them their rights word for word before snapping the cuffs on tight, the metallic click deafening in the silence. Once they were secured in Sheriff Peterson's cruiser, looking utterly defeated, we headed back to the station. Nathan, for once, kept his mouth shut, his arrogance shattered. Mayor Miller was processed and locked up without incident, his usual bluster gone. Nathan, though, was saved for me. Inside the interrogation room, the air thick with tension, Sophia sat silently beside me, her presence a silent strength. I spread the paperwork on the table, the legal documents looking innocuous against the brutal truth they represented. I hit play on the tape recorder. Nathan's own voice, clear and distinct, confessing to the scheme, dripping with arrogance, played for him to hear, exposing his depravity in his own words. He went pale, all the bravado drained right out of him, replaced by pure terror. This isn't admissible. You can't use this," he stammered weakly, his voice a desperate whisper. "Doesn't matter." I shrugged, a cold satisfaction spreading through me. "See, we don't even need court for this. We just need Homeland Security to hear it and think you're planning an execution. Pretty sure they'll be very interested in what you and your daddy were planning for Sophia." I was bluffing hard, playing on his fear and ignorance, but Nathan wasn't sharp enough to call it. He slumped in his chair, utterly defeated, his spirit broken. "What do you want me to do?" he muttered, his voice hoarse. I didn't hold back. I laid out clean. Once his lawyer arrived, he'd sign over everything to Sophia, all his assets, property, every last cent of his trust fund. After that, it would all go to the judge, a legal formality. He'd serve time, and when, or if he got out, he'd start over with nothing, stripped bare of all his privilege. Nathan just nodded, too broken to argue, the fight completely gone from him. Watching him crack, watching the self-proclaimed golden boy of our town finally fall, was the most satisfying thing I'd felt in a long time. He broke. He actually cried. I'd never seen Nathan Miller cry. Not in high school. Not when his football career ended. Not even when he got arrested earlier. But now he was sobbing like a child, his shoulders shaking, tears streaming down his face. I glanced at Sophia, who looked just as stunned as I did, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and quiet triumph. Then Sophia, cold and sharp, cut through the silence, her voice clear and unwavering. "Shut up, Nathan. You and your father planned to kill me. You're not sorry. You're just sorry you got caught. And honestly, it's about damn time." The words hit him harder than a punch, shattering what little composure he had left. Nathan's eyes glazed over, staring blankly at the wall, like the weight of it all had finally crushed him, rendered him inanimate. And honestly, it was about damn time. It didn't take long for Nathan's lawyer to show up, a harried man who looked like he'd seen it all. The second I played him the recording, he closed his eyes and sighed like a man who knew the inevitable had just landed on his desk, an impossible case. When I laid out my plan, spreading the tape to every local news outlet and even the major national stations, ensuring public humiliation, he quickly snapped Nathan out of his dazed stupor. Within minutes, Nathan, desperate to avoid further disgrace, signed the divorce papers without further resistance, handing over his entire financial future to Sophia. Mayor David Miller wasn't much different. Once his own high-powered lawyer arrived and saw the same mountain of evidence, the undeniable recording, Mayor Miller signed as well. No arguments, no tantrums, just a defeated scrawl. And since we never promised to withhold anything, we hadn't written a single word about bargaining or discretion. We followed through on our original plan with ruthless precision. The tapes were sent out far and wide. Local news, the big three national networks, ABC, CBS, NBC, Fox News, and even the state attorney general's office. It was like dropping a bomb in the middle of our little town. Within days, reporters swarmed the streets, satellite vans clogged the roads, and every cafe and motel in town was packed with journalists, state investigators, and federal agents. The town's bank account had never looked better, thanks to the unexpected tourism, the constant influx of media and law enforcement. Everyone made a buck, except Nathan and Mayor Miller. The federal agents went deep, peeling back layers of deception and corruption. They unearthed all kinds of skeletons in Mayor Miller's closet. Questionable tax returns, offshore accounts, money trails that didn't add up, and shady contracts tied to Nathan's town hall dealings. By the time the dust settled, Sheriff Peterson managed to walk away clean. Nathan and Mayor Miller tried to pin the worst of it on him, screaming about his complicity, but the evidence didn't stick. He might have turned a blind eye once, compromised his ethics, but he hadn't committed any crimes, hadn't actively conspired in the deeper corruption. Emily wasn't so lucky. She got subpoenaed and dragged into court as a witness. Her role in the affair and Nathan's abuse revealed. The media vultures tore her apart at first, a feeding frenzy, but I made sure the real story got out. In a carefully worded public statement and a few discreet interviews, I painted her honestly as a victim who'd been manipulated and used by the Miller family, just like everyone else. I was asked in one interview if I would have ever taken her back. Without hesitation, I answered no, my voice firm and clear. I meant every word. As for Sophia, she walked out of the divorce with everything. The house, all of Nathan's assets, and full freedom, a new lease on life. Martha Miller, the mayor's wife, did the same with Mayor David Miller, her divorce quick and decisive. Both women finally got justice, a sweet, hard-won victory. When sentencing came, Nathan and Mayor Miller were hit hard. Conspiracy to obstruct justice, abuse of public office, and a few extra charges the feds found along the way, including tax fraud and bribery. The conspiracy to commit murder charge was dropped due to insufficient direct evidence of intent to kill, but the public perception was already set, and the other charges were enough. Odds are they'll never see daylight again, serving long federal sentences. Not long after, Sophia, and I got married in a beautiful, intimate ceremony. Her family, once distant, returned to town for the ceremony, filling the church with familiar, welcoming faces. Emily even showed up with her new boyfriend, a genuinely decent, quiet guy who seemed to truly care for her. Surprisingly, I had a quiet conversation with him, exchanging pleasantries, and I found myself wishing them well, which, to be honest, felt strange but good, a final release of old resentments. Word later got around that Nathan, too, found companionship in prison, courtesy of a very large and affectionate cellmate. From what I heard, his attitude and bodily functions changed significantly by his 6th month inside, a satisfying detail. Meanwhile, Judge Roy Miller, Nathan's uncle, didn't escape the fallout entirely. The Fed started digging into his past, spurred by Eleanor, and quickly uncovered a web of corruption, bribery, tampering with evidence, and questionable rulings that benefited the Miller family. His own wife, Eleanor, ended up turning him in during their divorce, submitting her own evidence to the feds. No one was sure if it was revenge or a newfound morality, but either way, she finished the job, leaving nothing to chance. Judge Miller now calls a federal penitentiary home, while Mayor David Miller, last I heard, found himself playing soprano roles in prison musicals. Fitting, indeed. Emily eventually remarried the same man she brought to our wedding, and from what I hear, they're expecting their first child. I'm genuinely happy for her, truly. Life has a strange way of balancing things out, of granting second chances. Sheriff Peterson retired not long after everything settled, his conscience somewhat clear. He and his wife are enjoying their quiet years, taking long trips in their RV. And while their kids are grown and gone, he still drops by the station occasionally, sharing old stories and offering quiet advice. He never lost the habit, and I always welcome him. As for me, well, I was elected sheriff after Martha took over as mayor. A surprising turn of events for our small town. Turns out the woman who once stood silently behind her corrupt husband had more backbone than anyone realized, a quiet strength that resonated with the townspeople. The people trusted her, and when Sheriff Peterson stepped down, she personally handed me the badge, a symbol of a new era. Now, sitting here years later, the chaos is far behind me, a distant echo. I've got my young son, Alex Jr., in my arms, his soft weight a comforting presence, while a very pregnant Sophia feeds our little girl, Chloe, at the kitchen table, her laughter bubbling through the air. Life is peaceful, vibrant, full of the joyful noise of a growing family. We turned the old guest room into a nursery, filled with soft colors and tiny furniture, and our daughter already has her own room down the hall, decorated with princesses and dreams. For bedrooms, one busy, chaotic, and overflowing household, and Sophie has already put her foot down. This will be our last baby. She jokes that the factory is closing, but the playground stays open, her eyes twinkling with mischief. I couldn't be happier. I love my wife, Sophia, with a fierce, unwavering devotion. I love this life, this beautiful, messy, unexpected life. And if there's one thing I've learned through all the storms, it's that sometimes after the darkest night, you really do find the calm, a peace you never thought possible. I still find myself waking up some mornings, a fleeting moment of disorientation, thinking I'm back in that old life. My badge on a nightstand, Emily asleep beside me, the weight of silent resentments and unfulfilled desires filling the room. But then I roll over, and there's Sophia, hair gloriously messy, breathing soft, and even a little drool on the pillow. And I remember that life, that marriage is long gone. And thank God for that. The town changed too, forever marked by the scandal. Scars heal, but they don't disappear entirely. You can still hear whispers about the Miller scandal at the corner grill or when the old-timers gather outside the general store. Their voices hushed, but full of knowing. Some folks say I got lucky, that I somehow came out on top of all the mess, a hero by circumstance. Others think I planned it all from the start, a Machiavellian chess master. Truth is, I didn't plan a damn thing beyond the immediate fallout. I just got tired of watching people like the Millers get away with it, tired of injustice. Sophia? She's a force of nature. She didn't just survive Nathan. She rebuilt herself, brick by brick. She runs her own real estate firm now, the largest in the county, took back control of her life piece by piece, thriving beyond all expectations. Watching her grow into someone even stronger, even more resilient than she already was, that's been the real reward, the most profound victory. As for me, I never asked to be sheriff, never sought the position, but the badge fits differently now. It's not about power anymore. It's about keeping this town honest, even when it doesn't want to be, about serving the people who trusted me. Martha, now mayor, keeps me on my toes, a formidable and ethical leader. The two of us still meet every Thursday for coffee, swapping rumors, checking each other's blind spots, a partnership forged in fire. She always says the real reason she trusts me isn't because I exposed her husband and son. It's because I never gave up on Sophia, even when I could have just walked away, even when it would have been easier. Emily's name barely comes up these days. Last I heard, she and her new husband moved further south after their baby was born, building a new life. Do I hate her? No, not anymore. I think part of me will always care, if only because of who we used to be, the children we were. But I don't miss her, not really. I miss the idea of her, the version of Emily that only ever existed in my head, the perfect wife for my childhood dreams. Turns out she was never really that person, just a figment of my own desire for stability. Life didn't just give me a second chance, it handed me the right one. And when I come home now, badge hung up by the door, boots kicked off, two kids screaming with joy, and Sophia giving me that tired, knowing, loving look, I realize I wouldn't trade this chaos, this beautiful, noisy, vibrant life for anything. Not for the smooth, quiet, picture-perfect marriage I thought I had. Not for a second. They say storms pass, but sometimes, when you're lucky, they also clear the air, leaving behind something far more beautiful than before.